Abby.
And I'm Caitlin, and today we have a very special guest on the show, author Aurora Ascher. And we're so
We are
excited.
so excited to have her on today. She'll be joining us here in a few minutes. So, she has a new book coming out on January 9th, and it is called Sanctuary of the Shadow. And we already read it. We got a pre-release copy because we're really super special.
Yeah, sorry you guys can't be like as cool and special and chosen as us, but if
It was
everyone,
incredible.
it was so incredible, and you should be jealous that you haven't been able to read it yet. And I hope you're so jealous that you're like pre-ordering right now. It's actually available for pre-order.
And you should do that.
So, and it comes with the pre-order version, at least, comes with like the spray painted edges. It's got little suns spray painted on,
Shut
not
up.
spray painted, like whatever they do
Like
in
the
the
sprayed
books.
edges, yeah.
Sprayed edges. Yes, kind of like the first edition of Fourth Wing, because it's
Which I was
published by Red Tower.
not lucky enough to obtain. But you can be very lucky and get this one instead.
So that being said, Aurora does have a website. It's auroraascher.com, where you can find all of this information and all the info about the books she's published. But straight from the website itself, I'm going to read to you just a little bio to introduce her. Paranormal and fantasy romance author Aurora Ascher loves misunderstood mythical monsters, redeemable anti-heroes, and epic happily ever afters. Don't we all? A woman of many creative pursuits, Aurora is also a professional musician and visual artist. She currently resides in Montreal with her trusty espresso machine and her endlessly patient husband, whom she sometimes doesn't see for hours until she emerges from her writing cave like a bear in springtime.
That's so valid.
I will
I
say,
didn't even have like a reason to emerge from my cave. Like I'm not even doing anything productive.
yeah, no, like she's getting stuff done, and
Getting it
we
done.
hibernate for no reason. Her previous works before Sanctuary of the Shadow include the Hellbent series, and those are paranormal romance novels.
Which
So,
we have not gotten to read yet, but we are super excited to.
yeah, I can't wait. There's a
Um,
few of those out already,
yes,
so
seven.
plenty to
Yeah,
read.
7 books out already. So before we jump in here, we do want to just give a little preview to what Sanctuary of the Shadow is. So we'll read the little, it's not synopsis, the summary.
Yes, the
That's
summary.
what it's
That's
called.
the word.
That's it. Book 1 of the Elemental Emergence series. Enter at your own risk and discover the greatest show unearthed in this explosive, darkly imaginative debut fantasy. For humans, the circus is a place filled with wonder and amazement. For Harrow, though, it's a place to hide from those who slaughtered her entire clan. Disguising her abilities as part of her act has kept her true identity safe for years, until he arrives. A strange new attraction with no name, no memory of who or even what he is, let alone an explanation for his odd yet deadly powers. But beneath the layers of anger and isolation, one glimpse into his inky eyes reveals a soul that calls out to the loneliness in her own, and so she chooses him. Harrow is drawn to the darkness, to her insatiable need to soothe the beast who threatens their very existence. But with every secret she unlocks from his past, another from hers whispers free as well, luring enemies who will stop at nothing to get their final revenge on Harrow. And she's afraid she's given them the perfect weapon against her, because he's not what he seems. But maybe it's time they finally learn. Neither is she.
It's
Ah!
so good. Okay. Wow. And that, is the intro to the book. So that being said, joining us now is Aurora Ascher. Aurora, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We always kind of start off a little bit, just telling us about yourself. We'll cover a little bit earlier too, but yeah, anything you want the listeners to know about you?
Yeah, everything, I guess. I'm obviously a fantasy paranormal author. I've been, I don't know, writing for about like 7 years or something. And I'm also a musician. That was always my childhood dream, was to be a concert pianist.
Oh, cool.
That's
Oh,
kind of,
cool.
Isn't that
yeah.
funny how
That's
life
awesome.
takes you a different direction sometimes?
Yeah, I was pretty set on that as a kid, and then I got older. I was like, nah, I'm good.
So, at what point in time did you decide to become an author?
Yeah, so after I moved to Montreal, which is where I live now, this story is so funny. I had this really shitty job when we first moved here, just, pay the rent, whatever, new city. And basically I worked at this juice bar and I don't know why they kept this business open. Like there was like, I think I made like 3 drinks a day, like in like an 8-hour shift. It was like so dead. So I was just so bored. And like when I was a kid, I had been a really voracious reader. And then I hadn't read a book, like any book in like 15 years or something like that, like for my whole teens and early 20s. Yeah. And then I was just super bored. And I was like, well, I'm just gonna read something. And I don't even know how I stumbled on, but the first paranormal romance I ever read was like J.R. Ward's
I love
Black
J.R.
Dagger
Ward.
Brotherhood. Yeah, and I was like, what is this? Like my mind exploded. And I was totally obsessed. So that kicked off, like it must have been like 3 years of like heavy like reading. Like I was
That's a
obsessed. I read everything romance.
that's a big one to jump into too. That's like a super long series.
Yeah, yeah, and I just like and I had so much time and I just read at, like all the time and like I read on the train to and from work. I read like at home when I got home like so then after that it was like kind of natural I guess for me that I started getting ideas and I wanted to write my own stuff. And that's
Yeah.
how we are here today.
I feel like everybody has like gone through like some weird book slump between the ages
Mhm.
of like 18 to like mid late 20s and
Totally.
I was just
I feel
gonna
like there's
say that's so like such a common story. Everyone gets kind of burnt out for a while and then they just
yeah.
rediscover reading and are obsessed again.
And I think there's a lot like especially for romance readers like they're you're kind of told what you're supposed to like, like this is the smart book that everyone's, and then you're like, oh, I guess I don't like reading because this book's boring,
yeah,
Right.
and then it's like, no, you're just not reading like the right stuff. Because when you find the right thing that really is what you want to read, it's like, oh my God, I'm obsessed. So
Exactly. That's so
definitely.
true. I would say
Yeah,
there's
like
a lot of like, yeah, some attitudes in the reading world that are kind of like, ooh, that's not very high quality reading. But
yeah,
I really question those people's own
it's
like security in themselves because that's just
totally.
such a weird judgment to pass on people.
It's kind of like the patriarchy thing, like, it's like,
yeah.
oh, if girls like it, it's not good or whatever. And you're like, you
Well,
know what?
Exactly.
and that's I don't know how like your education went, but like we were forced to read like so many like advanced placement books or like certain genres were only what we're allowed to read like in high school and college. And so I think that was an easy way to get burnt out as well, just because
Yeah.
some of that literature is just not intriguing at all. And so I
And
think, yeah, it
they
caused a lot of
pick,
people to give up.
yeah, they pick like, the old, they're like, oh, this is, the height of writing. And it's just like some old white dude from like
It's
the
Yeah.
50s.
freaking John
Like,
Steinbeck. I have beef with
yeah.
John Steinbeck books. I don't understand it.
So
uh,
what was, kind of your path to publication?
Yeah, so I was writing for a while before I felt like for at first writing was just like such a personal thing. Like I had this kind of idea set up for me that what I was going to do with my life, I was going to be a musician and I was doing all this stuff. And then I started writing and it was like, this is just for me. Like I wouldn't let like first of all, I wouldn't even let my like husband know that I was writing. And he was like, what are you even doing? And I was like, nothing. And then I finally told him that I was writing and he was like, oh, cool. Like maybe I could like read it. And I was like, no, like never.
Absolutely
So
not.
yeah. So it was a few years before it stopped being this like intensely personal thing. And I actually was like, actually, I wrote like a few books, like, and then so he was really like, oh my God, you need to again, like not I was like not ready for it. I didn't want to. And it just took, I don't know, it was just a certain point that I was like, okay, I've written like 5 or 6 books now. Like this is a thing. Like I'm not just like imagining this. And then I felt like I was finally kind of ready. And that was really in 2020, actually, when the pandemic started. It was like I had to kind of reassess everything like everyone did. We were all like,
Sure,
you
yeah.
suddenly go over your life choices and you're like, wait, like, is this what I want to do? Or I have to do something new. And so that was when I started getting into like publishing and like building my like author brand and like
yeah.
doing this as a career.
That'd be so scary,
cool.
making yourself, really vulnerable like that to, publish your first book. That's basically like your baby, and you're giving it to somebody to judge. And
yeah, it was
a scary process.
And I can relate to even being like scared to share it with your husband. Like that's, you get so worried that it's not going to be received the way that you want it to. But I think what you did is like so cool and so brave. And I mean, I will say that I've only read Sanctuary of the Shadow. I haven't read your other books, but I am so excited to read them now because I really enjoyed this one.
Thank you.
So that being said, with all of your path to publication and everything, what are some challenges that new authors may face?
That's a good one. Well, when I first started, like I would say the two things for me, like when I first started, I was researching the difference between traditional publishing, and indie. And at first I was like, I want to be a trad author because I just liked the idea of having a team and like having an editor and, working with people. But I started querying, and like, that's like when you have to basically write like a pitch for your book, and then you just cold call, email people who have never heard of you and like don't care about you, don't really care about your writing, and they're super busy, and it can take them like 6 months to reply to your email. So I did that for a while, and I was just like, you know what, like this is I don't like doing this. Like it makes me feel bad. Like it's just a lot of work, and the time difference, like by the time I would hear back, I'd be writing a whole new book. So it was like, yeah, so I was like, whatever. And the last query I ever sent was to Red Tower. Well, they didn't exist at the time, but Entangled. And I was like, that's it, I'm done. And then I decided to indie publish, and I started working on that. And then they got back to me and was like, oh, and I was like, oh my God, okay. But basically It was, so it's like choosing between trad and indie is a challenge. And both of them, like indie, the challenge is like you have to do everything yourself. Like you have to learn, like I did so many courses, like online courses, like studying like business and like entrepreneurship and like stuff that I was like, I'm just a writer. Like,
I wasn't prepared for this.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I learned a lot of really cool stuff doing that, but that's definitely like a hurdle. And then with trad, you have to be really like thick skinned. Like you have to be really to face like rejection and not take it personally and not get like bogged down. And then I think the other biggest challenge is like, I love the online community, like Bookstagram, Book Talk, whatever. Like, I think it's so cool that like we were talking about how like specifically women, specifically romance books, there's not like, they're kind of like brushed aside by like, bookstores don't even carry the books, or like, so we've kind of created this community where it's like about us and we're actually talking about what we like to read, and no one else can tell us it's not valid. So I love that. But on the flip side, there's this element of like, and maybe it's all in your head, but like a lot of people tend to like compare and like, like, how do I measure up? And like, like my Instagram page isn't pretty enough, or like, like feeling like, oh, there's not as many people as reading my books as this other author. And like, there's like this kind of, it's kind of like a high school clique or something sometimes.
Well, and I feel like there's just so many like books that people like, I feel like there's a certain core set of series that people kind of read to get back into reading, and so they do compare a lot of new books or independent books to those, and it's going to be different every time. It's not going to be the same, cut and paste type story. And so I feel like that would be really difficult to like have those people who are basing everything off of those.
I can think of like, there are just so many, like we'll call them mainstream for lack of a better word, but mainstream like romantasy series that really kind of took over the past few years. And so I can imagine that it probably gets old for authors who have books that aren't quite as well known for them to be like compared head to head. I feel like that would be kind of disheartening at times. Or I mean, maybe sometimes it feels good if the feedback is like overwhelmingly positive.
It depends how it comes in, like if they're saying it's as good as this, you're like, oh
okay.
Oh gosh, I can't even imagine though, like for you personally, do you tend to try to avoid reading reviews or comments?
Yeah, definitely. My policy is like preserve my mental state at all costs. So like I just like I avoid Goodreads. Like don't go Goodreads. It's scary over there. Like and like
Yeah.
yeah, I just try to stay away from things that make me feel bad or question myself or whatever, because like it's just like what's the point? Like, it's like I know people like my writing. I know it's good. Like, you have to believe in yourself, and there's no point in like subjecting yourself to things that make you feel bad.
Exactly. That is so fair.
We do a bit on here. It's called Goodreads Bad Reviews. And so we go on Goodreads and we read like the 1-star reviews that people leave on like series or books that we read, and people can just be so hateful for no reason.
And I swear to you, whenever they're leaving those 1-star reviews, it's like, did you even read the book? Like, I swear they didn't even read it.
Finish
like they're just
at like 20%. It's like, oh, so you did it actually.
Yeah.
And sometimes I just try to tell myself like there's something else going on in their life, and like they read this at a certain time that it triggered them feeling terrible, and it's nothing to do with me, and like or maybe just like what I write isn't for them, and they just ended up reading it for whatever reason, or like like something like I just try to be like it's not personal, like it's
exactly.
Yeah,
because everything is going to, I mean, not everyone is going to like every book that exists. There's no way that could ever happen.
Yeah.
Just like me and the Grapes of Wrath. Like,
it's just not, it's not for me.
Sorry, Mr. Steinbeck.
Yeah, no. I would give that a detailed 1-star.
There's a lot of the classic literature I don't think I would ever recommend to anyone on purpose. Are there any authors or works that you kind of take inspiration from when you are writing?
I wouldn't say so much as like take inspiration as much as like when I read it, I'm just like, this is so good that like it like blows my mind, and then I feel like it makes me a better writer, kind of. You know, if that makes sense. Sure. But like one of my like favorite authors of all time is Cressley Cole. I don't know if you've read her Immortals After Dark series. That was
I haven't.
One of my like original paranormal romance like loves. I just every time I read one of her books, I'm just like my mind just expands, because she has this insanely masterful way of like dropping a thread like and then just picking it up like 5 books later and turning it into like an insane.
Oh my gosh.
And like there's all these interwoven timelines, and I'm always just like, how? Like I really love her books. Yeah.
It's like you forget about a character and then you come back to and you're like, oh gosh, like you're here again.
Yeah, and you're like, who is this character again? And it's like mentioned 5 books ago, like, and it's like the curse of so and so, and you're like, oh my god. it's
I love
really
that.
Cool.
Well, we'll add that to the list of books we need to read. It's ever growing. It's infinite.
There's so many, and that's kind of the beauty of this podcast, is that there's just we're never going to run out of books.
So true. So being, a paranormal and fantasy romance author, is that your favorite genre to read then?
Yeah, actually, that's a funny question, because up until about a year ago, I would have sworn that I would only read like paranormal or fantasy. Mm-hmm. And then maybe like 2 years ago, I said that. And then I was like, I started reading sci-fi romance. Okay. And then I was like, okay, I'll read sci-fi romance, but it has to be like something that's not real. And then this year, I don't know why, but I started reading like contemporary. and now I read a lot of contemporary. So I feel like I was just being dumb, like limiting myself, and I pretty much will read anything as long as it's romance.
Yeah.
That's the majority of what we read.
It's so crazy too, like going back and forth between the genres. And we talk about this a lot. Like sometimes we will be dead set on like fantasy books, and that's all we'll read for months. And then we'll switch to a contemporary romance and be like, holy cow, like who are these people? Like, what are we doing here? And it's really fun to go back and forth between the two, though. It's almost like taking a little refresher, and then you get to start in all over again.
Yeah. Sometimes it kind of gives your mind a break to not have to think about the more complex worlds that are in the fantasy and paranormal sci-fi genre. Sometimes my brain is a little like too low on energy to like keep up with those worlds that aren't real. So that's kind of when I switch it up usually.
Yeah, and I tend, like, as a writer, I tend to try to avoid things that directly remind me of what I'm writing especially at the time, because I don't want to feel like I'm like, oh, I read this in this book right when I was writing it. Like, I don't want to feel like anything influenced me. So,
Sure.
like, yeah, so if I'm writing fantasy, I'll be reading like something that's totally the opposite of that in every way. Just, it's like a palate cleanser kind of.
Yeah, that's so smart.
So do you feel like you will ever like be interested in writing different genres? Do you think you'll ever take a turn like away from like that type of genre?
I feel like I have this is very loose, but like lately I've been feeling like I kind of wanted to write something like dystopian.
Ooh, okay.
So like maybe like, I just had like, it was just vibes, like just vibes. But I was like, I could do that. Like, so well, I don't know. We'll see.
That would be amazing.
All the time. We've tried to write at least 8 different types of books.
So we have like plots for a bajillion books at this point, and we're like, we should write that, and then we just don't. But maybe we will. Maybe you'll inspire
and
us.
it's all based on vibes too. We're just like,
exactly.
oh yeah, that'd be cool. That'd be cool. Well, that's awesome. No, I think it's cool whenever authors are able to do a little bit of everything, and it's always like a nice surprise too when someone comes out with something that you've been so dedicated to a certain genre, and then they have something else and maybe the total opposite, and it's just as good. And I think that's just a true testament to writing abilities.
Yeah, I feel like if the story's there, like if the inspiration's there, go for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then last with this little, portion of our interview, this is just a little fun question. Do you have a book boyfriend? Who is it and why?
Like, are you? Oh, that's everywhere right now. Just book boyfriends galore.
Book boyfriends from my books or just anyone's
Any
books?
It could be any.
That's a good one. I guess who I'm thinking of, like my favorite rereads, like speaking of Cressley Cole, I go back and reread her one book, Demon from the Dark, it's called. I read that one like once a year. That's one of my favorite books. And if we're going way back and we're talking about the Black Digger Brotherhood, I love Zadis. Everyone loves Zadis, obviously.
Yes.
But yeah, current ones, trying to think.
I feel like there's so many now to like have to choose from.
I don't know if I have anyone like currently at the moment. I've been on my like rom-com reading thing right now. So like I love them, but I don't tend to like deeply like obsess.
I'm not connected with it.
Yeah, I need them to be like, have something that sets them apart a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. They can't be too much like a real man, then it's not as fun.
Yeah. Do you feel like book boyfriends like set expectations for like real life men? I feel like that's something that I see a lot on TikTok, like especially like women like comparing like these male characters to like who they're trying to meet like in real life.
Like if anything, I just look back and like on like me in like high school, and I'm like, if anything, that would have helped me so much, because like the kind of guys that I went out with, I would like, it's like I look back and I'm like, girl, like like if only I'd had a romance book, because then I could have just been like channel it in the book, like don't waste time with these losers. So
like, this person would have been a villain.
Yeah, if it sets expectations, I feel like they're a good thing. And obviously we don't want him to capture us or, kidnap us or stalk us or whatever the hell we're reading. Like, that's just a fantasy. It's like no one would ever say that. It's like, oh, you watch Game of Thrones, you want to get stabbed with a sword, or like, it's like,
yeah,
that's so
why
true.
does that apply to women? Like, it's like, that's such a bullshit, like, like excuse or whatever. So yeah, but I feel like if anything, it would make your standards higher, because you would read a book about like a guy who knows how to like give a woman an orgasm.
You're like, wow, that can happen. Oh my god,
that's real.
That's so crazy.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's good for women.
Yeah, like so much media, like all media is like male gaze centered. Like all movies, even movies that are like made for women, are still made by men with what they think women like.
Woman ones,
but like romance books, are like by women, for women. Like if men want to join in, they can, but they're really not part
Like
of the
it's not for
conversation.
you.
Yeah. And like if you don't like it, bye, like we don't care.
Exactly.
So I love that. It's such a safe space to like explore things and like discuss things with your friends or like whatever.
Yeah.
It really is. And like since we've gotten back into reading, I feel like both of us especially, we've really delved into a lot of stuff we maybe would not have ever read before. And like you really do like find things that you like, and you know, get different mindsets about things. And so it is such a cool environment to be a part of, just because it does change you as a person for the better.
Totally.
Yeah, I agree.
And like you unpack stuff too. Like you're like, this feels weird to me, like whatever. And then you can read a book about it and then you're like, okay, I get it now.
Like now I understand. Yeah.
Yeah. We definitely kind of delved into the world of monster romance like this past October. Yeah. So we learned a lot. And we learned about,
I did that too.
And we learned that we really like monster romance.
Yeah, there's some things we love, and then there were some things that we were like, maybe that's not exactly what I was looking for. But I mean, it's important to me to like try it, to give it a try.
Like developing your preferences, like I like scales but not fur, like
yes.
So yes,
exactly. It's like
that
I have
so
standards for my monster romances.
We just read a one about Krampus, and Tabby was like, to me, he doesn't have fur covering his body. Like I'm just gonna picture him without.
That didn't happen.
But he does have horns.
The horns I'm good with, claws, tails, wings.
Yeah,
like,
that's
give me all
totally
that. But
fine.
like the fur is like that's the like where I draw the line.
Unfortunately, it's just a little too much for me. But everything else is on the table.
Oh my gosh. Well, I love all of this, you know, self-discovery that we've been able to do through reading. But speaking of your writing, you have a book coming out January 9th, I believe it is. Mm-hmm. And it is called Sanctuary of the Shadow. And so without giving anything away to the people who haven't read it yet, how would you best describe your book?
Yeah, so it's a fantasy romance, as we've been discussing. It's spicy. So, you know, if you're new to the genre, watch out for that. And it's about a fortune teller who works in a circus, and she's like hiding her kind of true nature, her powers, her abilities. And she's also lost her family to a terrible, tragic incident. And there's then a mysterious man arrives, or a creature. He's got and he's has no memories of his past, but he has this feeling that he's done something really terrible, and he's living with some kind of misplaced guilt, and he's not quite sure, you know, what that is. And when they meet, they have this instant connection, and then they're exploring that and trying to escape, and adventures abound.
We loved it. When we got sent the email about like kind of the general summary of the book, I was so excited. I love anything circus related. I thought that was just the best thing on earth, and it really delivered. I thought it was incredible.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, the vibes were exactly what we wanted. 10 out of 10.
Sweet. That's good to hear. I'm glad.
With, again, like we don't want to spoil anything, obviously, because it's not out yet, but was there a scene in your book that was just your favorite to like either write about, or just your favorite, like from a reading perspective?
Probably, like I know one will get this, but you guys obviously, but the scene where Harrow brings him cookies.
That was mine. I have that written down.
That one is so good. That one is so good.
I texted Caitlin about it. I was like, oh my God.
That's very sweet.
And it was funny because when I queried that book, like I had just added that scene like after my last round of edits. And my editor, when she got back to me and said she wanted to do the book, she was like, this scene like decided me. Like this is what, like when I read this, I
my absolute favorite.
I
was kicking my feet reading it. It was so cute.
Maybe I'm just a little bit more toxic, but me personally, my favorite part is when Malika meets Oro for the first time out and about.
Loved his character.
I'm obsessed with him. I hope we get more of him in the future. Love him.
Yeah, he was fun to write. Shifty guy.
Yes.
You know, he popped up on her. I was like, well, I didn't know I was into that, but here we are.
Speaking of what we were just saying,
Yeah, love the scales.
Yeah.
And he's not covered in fur. Amazing.
No fur.
Perfect.
So which of your characters in this book do you identify the most with?
That would probably be Harrow, I think, because I really like strong female characters, but that are like still relatable. So like I'm not a swords woman or like an assassin.
Yeah.
Or, but I also like to think of myself as like a strong person. So yeah, like when I love reading this and I love writing it as like women characters that are like mentally strong, and they're like they will have strong values. They're they believe in themselves. They're confident, and like that doesn't necessarily mean they have to be like super badass.
Yeah.
It's like a state of mind. So yeah, I really like that about Harrow's character. Is she's actually like not gonna be like chopping heads off anyone, but she's more of a compassionate, like empathetic person.
Yeah.
But she's also like really, like I almost felt like I like aspired to be like her. Like she really trusts in her like instincts, and she's really like strong, like grounded person.
She really took what she wanted, like you said, she didn't really second guess herself about her decisions or anything like that. She stood by what she believed. I thought that was really awesome.
Yeah,
definitely refreshing main female character.
And what's interesting, I don't know if you did this like intentionally or if it was more like subconscious, but I mean, you mentioned like, she's not going to be chopping anyone's heads off, but she is still powerful in the sense that like she's not defenseless. I know there's a scene at one point where Lauren is kind of like, you need to get away from him, like, he's not human. And she's like, well, neither am I. And she does like this little show of power that kind of scares him. So she's definitely not defenseless, and I love that about her.
Yeah, I love that her power is like it gives her the confidence, but it's still like understated. So like it's not like a flashy thing. Like it's like you don't know until you piss her off. Like
right.
Yeah, I think that's something that you see a lot in romantasy books. You have like a main female character who's just the strongest there is on earth, very cocky, very like full of themselves, very like you said, kind of like has that badass mentality, which is really fun to read, but it is also really, really nice when you have a main character who you can relate to a little more, who's more real life than others.
Yeah, because I certainly would not be like ever picturing myself in those types of roles where they're more badass, they can kill people with knives and stuff. Like I'm never like, oh yeah, that could be me. So it is nice. It is nice to be able to relate a little bit more, like you're saying.
Totally. Yeah. And it's like I heard someone say this online somewhere. I can't even remember where I read it, but it was like they were like, strong women are not strong because they act like men. And I was like, I love that, because it's like you can have strong women that are like mothers with like traditional like a traditional role, or like a grandmother, and like those can be really strong women, just because like that doesn't mean they have to be like physically strong.
That's an interesting take, and I wonder how much, like, again, not that it's done intentionally, but whenever even women authors are writing their strong female main characters as more like violent, those types of characters, I wonder how much of that is influenced by just what they consider to be a show of strength, and how much that's affected by the patriarchy.
Or they feel like they have to like compensate for like other like male characters by like making their female characters like a certain way.
Totally. Definitely. Like I have to prove that she's strong by giving her these abilities. On the flip side, it is nice to read about a woman who can like kick ass.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh yes, I still love them. They have a place for sure. But I agree.
But I just like to question that.
Both.
Yes, we need both. We need everything on the spectrum.
Totally.
So if you can speak to this, and if you don't want to reveal this quite yet, that's totally fine too. But obviously, with the ending of this book, we kind of got a little bit with like Malika with Oro, and a cliffhanger almost to what they're doing. Do you think like they are going to be like a big part of this universe, like in any future books?
Yeah, I won't give anything away,
Yeah.
but I don't know if you read the little author note, like the next book is gonna be like Malika's story.
Right.
So that'll be she's gonna be the main character of that book, and all of the side characters, including Oro, are going to reappear and be
Ooh,
featured more in future books.
I'm so
But
excited.
I'm not gonna say
No, yeah, don't
No,
spoil,
no.
don't spoil
That's all we need to know.
yeah.
it. For
How
my own
many
sanity.
Yeah, I know. I needed you to say it. How many books will the Elemental Emergence series have, or do you know?
Yeah, I don't know for sure. I know there's going to be at least 3 because I have like the second book is like mostly written. It's in its like chunky, like very rough stage, not ready for human eyes, but like it exists.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third book is like also very loosely sort of written, but not. It's hard to describe. It's like the very first draft, like
Yeah.
of which there'll be like 10 drafts. But and then after that, but I also want to do like I also need to do some series plotting. Like that's one of my like New Year's plans after this book comes out is to like really sit down and like plot out like I know what I want to happen in the series, but I need to like put it into, how many books. So at least 3, maybe like 5. I don't know.
But it could be 5.
Maybe
Yeah.
12. I don't know.
Who's to say?
Yeah.
Time will tell.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
how it goes, though. Which is all good. The more, the merrier.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
What are you like the most excited about for the release of your book?
Yeah, I think that would be because this is like my first like trad pub release. And like there's like, like the idea of going to like Target and seeing my book in the store is like so exciting to me. Like I live in Canada, we don't have Target, but I'm literally gonna like go on like a road trip to like go to Target and like look at it.
Oh my gosh.
Like I don't know. I actually don't know for sure with what bookstores it'll be in Canada, but I'll go to those ones too. Like, like I'm like really excited for that. Like
going and sign some books.
Ooh.
Yeah. You see those videos, they're like, I sneakily signed my book. I'm like,
Yes.
oh.
That'd be so cool. Like, how special would you feel if you're that person that picked it up and like there's an author signature in there? I would die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, I love that.
What do you think you're like most nervous for?
Probably like the same thing, but like the flip side
Yeah.
of that, if that makes sense. Like the fact that like my indie releases have been like our small, tight-knit like community and like and actually I'm really glad that I have those out and I have that experience because like now on this like much bigger scale, it's like I'm a little bit prepared for that kind of like I have my shields and I'm like but yeah, so it's just like the fact that it's like so much wider of a scope, like there are people who will read the book who don't really read romance and might be like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Could happen if we're looking at, we just talked about how they don't often carry a lot of romance books in major bookstores.
Yeah.
And like that's slowly changing and people are getting like open to the genre more, but it's still kind of like cutting edge. So like it, to be one of the people who's like on that like sort of front, it's like you're opening yourself to people that are maybe like, not into that or repressed or like,
For sure.
they might be.
Like these types of books don't belong in bookstores and yeah, you get
yeah, just like, oh my God, the sex or like whatever.
Yeah. And it's so funny because again, it's such a like it seems to be such an issue for people to believe that exists in books, and yet they'll watch things like Game of Thrones. Like again, not to throw Game of Thrones under the bus because amazing books,
it's a great
amazing show.
Yeah.
But like I think if it's not mainstream directed for or towards a largely male audience, it's going to get judged for silly reasons, and it's
totally like it's like just automatically criticized, like or like the way that they don't quite know how to market, like like Sarah J. Maas books are in the YA section, And you're like, why?
Which, like, well,
Yeah.
this really probably shouldn't be.
We've talked about that before on the podcast.
What are we doing? And then if you go to the fantasy section, it's like male authors, like male authors. And then you go to the like YA section and you're looking at like spicy adult romance
And
books
it's
and you're like,
everything
why?
else,
Like,
yeah.
but it's just because they're written by a woman. They're like, must be for kids. Like, because women can't write for adults. Like, what are you doing?
That is
There
such
was a store that opened, I think it's in New York. It's called the Rip Bodice, and like they're catering like specifically to like romance readers. So they have romance of every like genre, anything that you could possibly want. And I think stuff like that is so cool.
I love that.
Yes, and it's just, women owned. It's very supportive of all types of communities, and I think we definitely need more safe places like that.
That just opened in Kansas City, Missouri as well.
Oh,
that's
okay.
just romance. So we'll have to, and
Sweet.
that's where we're from. I'm excited.
Oh, that's cool. I'm jealous.
Yes.
I don't have anything like that here.
I know.
Yeah, well, I think it's like slowly, people are finally realizing that there's a market for this and they will be successful because women are passionate and supportive of the things that they love.
I know. I love that. Like we in this community, like I was a musician. I still am, but like before I got into this, and like in the music world, there's this kind of like competitive vibe. Like people are. It's almost like they're like, you're gonna steal my success, or like. So if you're like, oh, I'm trying to book a tour, like you guys booked a tour to this place, like can you put me in touch with your like booker or your manager? People would be like, oh. They're not, like they're not taking new people, or like you're kind of like really like But like I've never once felt that when I came into this community. It was like when I first started publishing, I like messaged a few like authors that I followed, and like one author, like she like did a video tour of like all of her like things and like sent me, and she's like, this is the glossy version, this is the matte version of the books, and like this is this, and here's how I do my sales, like, and like I was like so blown away by how much like support I got from people, and I was like, I love it. Like I've never experienced this. It was so touching.
Yes, absolutely. That's really like heartening for all the people who do want to publish books, and to know that they're going to have supportive mentors who have been through it already.
Yeah, and like people gave me so much support when I was starting out that now like if anyone messages me, I'm like, I'll do the same for them, because like that meant so much to me. Like when I was starting out and I was super nervous and like I didn't know what I was doing. And like, it's like, and I still talk to those authors, today, and now we're more like peers because we're both, successful, and it's like pretty cool. There was no feeling of like you're not welcome, or like
that's amazing. And I'm not surprised. Honestly,
that's so heartening to know. It's a safe space both for authors and for like the readers themselves to be able to express themselves in any way, and they're always going to get that support that they need, or some direction that they need for whatever way they're going.
Totally.
So that kind of wraps everything up, but we do want to know, what do you have going on right now? Are you working on anything new, or really just kind of preparing for the release?
Yeah, right now I'm actually writing the last book in my indie series, like book 6. And it's kind of like, you guys haven't read those books, but it's like it's like about the character that like everyone loves. Ooh. So like I've been working on that, like, and I'm like trying to not feel the pressure, but there is a bit of pressure. Sure. And yes, I'm working on that, plus like getting ready for this release. So I'm trying to kind of just be like, just write when you can, and just like be casual. And then I also know that like in the new year at some point I'm going to be diving into book 2 of this series, the Elemental series, like because it's like it's written and it's been like very roughly like gone over, so I know there's a lot more to do on that. That's coming up soon.
That's so exciting. We're so excited to read the second book.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm we haven't read your indie series yet, but just knowing that there's already so many published and we don't have to wait for them to be released is exciting to me.
Bump that up to the top.
Yeah, you guys are lucky. You've got five books there already. So
that's the great thing about discovering a series after it's already been completed.
I know,
or mostly completed.
I feel bad because my people that have been following, like the book 5 came out in June. And like the other books, I somehow managed to get them out like 4 months apart.
Oh, wow.
I don't know how I did that, but this one I was like, I can't sustain that. So this one, it's been, since June, and I'm still writing it. So I'm like, sorry, like,
it'll make it so much
longer.
more worth it when they actually get to read it.
Yeah, I'd way rather an author like take their time on a book than just kind of like churn stuff out and it's not like the caliber it could have been.
Totally. And we're not machines. Like,
yeah,
that was like, I think the reason this book is taking me longer is because I had a little bit of like a creative burnout. Like after releasing 5 books 4 months apart, I was like, okay, I need to slow
take
down.
a break.
That is very valid. That makes sense to me. I mean, obviously, I'm so excited to read everything you published in the future, and best of luck with everything with your first traditional publishing.
We're going to be covering it when it comes out on the podcast, so we're super, super excited to share it with the rest of our listeners. And
thank you. I can't wait.
So again, best of luck and have a wonderful winter holiday season.
Thank you. You guys as well.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Aurora's new book, Sanctuary of the Shadow, will be out on January 9th of this year. And we will also be discussing this book on the podcast on February 5th.
Yeah, so everyone will have, time to get their reading done, and we'll be discussing it like normal. But as far as, in the meantime, next week, we will be discussing Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros, and we're so excited to discuss that one. There's 2 books out in this series so far. The second one will be Iron Flame. But the week after we discuss Fourth Wing, we're going to do a little mini-sode where we fan cast because
we haven't done one of those in a while.
It's been a minute, and we love to fan cast, so we will be doing that. So go ahead, get started on Fourth Wing and Iron Flame. We'll talk to you next time, and as always,
let's get lit.